Ah, nothing like some really smooth sheetrock. On the Build Show today, we're going to go to Build Show contributor Lydia Crowder. You probably know her as Drywall Shorty. She's a contractor in Bozeman, Montana that's been shooting videos for the Build Show for about 2 years now. And you know, as a master builder, I don't necessarily need to know every nuance about her trade, but I really like watching Lydia's videos because I get a good sense for what I need to know to bid the job correctly, to make sure that the guys on the job are doing the job correctly. And it gives me a flavor and an understanding for what that trade's all about. So that being said, Lydia is gonna actually school us this week on how to get that really smooth wall. We're gonna talk about the tools and the grits necessary to do the job right. With that being said, the best of the Build Show, let's get going.
Hi everyone, Lydia Crowder here, and today on the Build Show Network, we're going to be talking about sanding. So one thing that's really important when you get into drywall, patching, and just finish work in general is sanding. It's one of the most important things that you can do to make sure your job looks fantastic. Some people say they don't sand, good finishers never sand. That is a lie. We always sand. If you want to really have that job look fantastic and take it to the next level, sanding is a necessity. So I'm going to go over what we use, some things to look for when we are picking sanding materials, and then just briefly over different size poles and papers. So first things first, the lower the number on the grit means the coarser the sand is going to be. So this is an 80, which is very coarse. This is a 220 in here, which is very, very fine. And then the sanding sponges that we have here are also a fine to a medium grit. So depending on what you're wanting to do is going to depend on what grit you're choosing. Now, an 80 grit or 100 would really be for removing textures or like really gritty, something you really need to sand down quickly. Most of the time, the lowest we're ever going is 150. And we'll go all the way as high as 320 for sanding smooth walls. So when we look at the papers available, one thing you always want to find is a sanding paper or a pad that has cushion. So this paper right here has cushion built into it. So what this does is it makes sure that this isn't just directly scratching the surface. This goes on top of a square pole, like this. And then you sand against the wall, and then this just makes cushion so that paper isn't like gritting and scratching all over the surface. It's really important that you look for something that has adequate cushion and padding so that you're not scratching your surface. This one also has cushion on the head, so you're getting double there with the pad and then the head. Now the round pole here, same thing. We have a really nice pad on this. These are a hook and loop system, so your paper will just stick on there, unlike that one where you actually fold it and put it in the back. This paper just goes straight on top. And the paper that's on here right now is a mesh paper. So instead of one solid, it's like a little fine mesh, and it makes for really nice sanding. This is also a 150 grit. Now we'll look at the Trimtex Black Widow. This one's square, so it kind of has both of those built into one. We use a square head most of the time for sanding angles. Round pole is just general sanding. This guy puts both into one. Now this one has paper that's also padded. So this will go on top, and then it has a really nice cushion pad on there. Again, it's all about the cushion. You're going to get a better finish the more padding that you have. This also is just fine. Most of the time we're running a fine grit for everything. We don't sand a lot, but finer grits will help you not to over sand. And then lastly, our power sanders. So this is the Makita power sander. This one is battery operated. You don't need any power to run this. You can hook these up to a vac if you so choose. The Planex, the Festool Planex, does need to be hooked up to a vacuum, and that one is power. And it will actually have suction and kind of like suck itself to the wall. We'll talk about that a little bit deeper in another episode. I let my dad borrow the system, and he hasn't given it back to me. I've asked him like 5 times, and he just is ignoring it now. So I'm kind of just chalking that up to being his for the rest of the year. But this Makita here, we use quite a bit. We've had it for a couple years. Again, really nice pad on here. If this was straight paper and no padding, it would just gouge and scratch. So same thing with the Festool, you need to be making sure you're using a really good padding paper back behind these paper that you're sanding. These have articulating heads, different speeds, different movements. They're really handy if you're in an occupied space. You can hook them up to a vacuum, and then the holes in here suck the dust through the sander, through a hose, and into the vacuum. Now, they're not for everybody. Sometimes we just don't pull them out. They just don't make sense on a certain job. Also depends on the size, how many volts there are, and how big the job is. But they're definitely handy. You can get through a lot of sanding very quickly. Not as detailed as hand sanding or as using the poles behind us, but they're still a great option for getting things done quickly. If you are removing textures, like sanding down popcorn, getting rid of any sort of really abrasive textures, these are going to be your go-to. Put a really gritty paper on here and just go to town, and it'll get rid of the popcorn and any sort of texture that you have going on that you want to get rid of. And last but not least are sanding sponges. These are super important. We always have them on hand. Trimtex makes the absolute best. This is the 885. It's a dual angled sanding sponge. So both sides have some grit to them. There's a medium and a fine. And then it also has a really nice pad on there. As you can tell, like the whole thing's just squishy. So when we use these, we're using these for detail sanding and angles, crisping up anything that, like hand sanding that we missed when we're checking our smooth walls. And then we're also just have these on hand all the time to help sand out knives, any sort of nicks that we have going on, or any like little extra things that we need to do. They're just always on site. One thing that you want to do with these before you use them, if you have two, just rub them together really quick. Make sure that there's no like high points, or you can always take another piece of sanding paper and just give it a quick brush. And the reason I'm doing this is to make sure it's a nice even surface and there aren't any like large pieces of grit that will catch and dig later. And then that's about it. Your sanding sponge is ready to go. Once these start losing chunks, which they will do, the more you use them, the longer you have them around, they kind of start to get frayed and you'll kind of start to lose pieces of the sponge. Make sure you throw it away. You're not doing yourselves any favor by using a sanding sponge that costs $5 for 30 jobs. Like, that's not helping anything. So once it starts getting kind of like broken up and it starts falling apart, just toss it and grab a new one. They're super easy to find and they are lifesavers. Anyway, that's pretty much it for sanding. Remember, the lower the grit, the coarser the paper, and then you want to be finding things that have adequate padding and cushion to make sure that your sanding turns out nice and you're not digging and gouging into your previous work. That's it for me this week. I will check you next week on the Build Show Network, and make sure to check me out on socials. I am under Drywall Shorty on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Guys, if you're not already following Lydia on social media, her videos are super fun. She's at Drywall Shorty on most of the platforms out there. And of course, if you want to watch her Build Show videos, go over to thebuildshow.com. We'll put a link in the description so you can find her videos, including her bio, how she got into the trade. And now she's been shooting videos for 2 or 3 years. So she's got a whole catalog of great videos for you to go watch, whether you're a young contractor, whether you're an old salty builder like me who's been around the block. I really, really appreciate Lydia's fantastic work on the Build Show. Lastly, in the description below will be a link to our newsletter. You know, thebuildshow.com, we're publishing like 15, 16 videos every single week, and it's hard to know what's new on the site. So we're gonna send you an email twice a week to say, here's what's new from Lydia, here's what's new from Travis or Steve or Jake or me or whatever, so that you can be abreast of the newest and the latest and the greatest. And lastly, I wanna mention, when you watch a video over on thebuildshow.com, we don't break in for commercials in the middle of a video. You can still do all the controls. You can watch it at 1.25 or 2x, whatever you want. And you can stream it to your TV, to whatever device you want to, so you don't necessarily have to watch it on the website. With that being said, guys, hit that subscribe button below. We've got best of content for the next couple Tuesdays, and of course, my brand new videos every single Friday. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, I'll see you next time on The Build Show.